Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Just a quick note before we begin, we will be recording and publishing this session on our YouTube channel. So we will be dropping the link in the chat, so be sure to subscribe. We'll also share contact details in the chat. As a special thank you, the first 30 people that contact us using the code SGP or partner to moving to Portugal will receive a free initial consultation of 30 minutes with our team. So, for those who are new, my name is Marissa Colasso, and I'm part of the team at SGP Sandra Gomes Pinto and Associates. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Sandra herself, who is a practicing lawyer with over 30 years of experience supporting international clients with relocation, investment, litigation, and a wide range of legal matters. She has spoken globally on Portuguese visas, investment opportunities in Portugal, litigation, arbitration, and has also lectured in Heidelberg. And I would also like to welcome our special guest, Tommy Taylor, who has very kindly agreed to share his family's relocation experience. Tommy and his wife, including their three daughters, are now well settled in Portugal. So before we begin, I would like to ask Dr. Sandra to start with a brief introduction of herself, her firm, and the full range of services that you provide.
Thank you. First of all, I would like welcome everybody and especially you, Tommy, and thank you a lot for doing this with us. We have met for almost 5 years, and we have accompanied your family's journey, and we feel you as friends and are affectionate for you, and are very happy that you are doing this with us. And we also feel some connection because you and your wife also have a legal, and your whole family a legal mindset, so we understand ourselves better. So first of all, it's a great pleasure to do this with you. It's a great pleasure to do this with you, Marisa, too. And I thank you all for attending the webinar today. Our firm, I work for over 30 years in Portugal with litigation, arbitration. I've done conferences all over the world about investment in Portugal and visas. I lecture in Heidelberg, which you probably know is one of the 50 world's best universities for law in the world. But most of us now, our firm and our company is focusing and helping mostly American, Canadians, and British to relocate to Portugal. Our aim is that they have a flawless legal process to help them navigate the bureaucracy, the subjectivity, the discretionary powers in a way that they feel supported throughout the whole time. And for us, this is, of course, a business, is to work, but it's also a life purpose. We like our clients. We like to establish long-term relationship. And this is a team that's intention is being of service and solve all your legal issues, even after the visa thing is done and it's gone. So I think this is in a small summarizing, this is us here at SGP.
Yes. And Tommy, thank you so much for being here today. To start us off, could you share a bit about yourself, your family, and why you made the decision to move to Portugal?
Sure. And thank you guys for having me, the whole team at SGP. Sandra Gomez and Associates is just fantastic. So my family and I moved to Portugal in mid-August of 2023. I have twin daughters that are 16, almost 17, and then another one that's 13. She's in seventh grade, and they attend Tassis, Portugal, here in Sintra. Um, Grew up in Atlanta and have two brothers. My wife's from Chicago and has a sister. And um, we when we made the jump, we contacted. So our journey began kind of where the webinar audience is. Uh, we had heard about Sandra through, I think, a Facebook group and sat in on a webinar. We're really, really impressed with what we heard. My wife and I are both attorneys. And so really wanted to find someone that we felt was not only competent, but professional and like someone that was going to be looking out for our interests the whole way and that we weren't going to have to follow up on and babysit. Um, and we're really impressed with what we heard. And so we started working with Sandra almost immediately. This would have been right around this time or maybe a little later in 2022, and with an eye towards moving in August of 2023. And Sandra really, it's hard not to sound gushing, just so you guys know for the rest of the hour, because things really did go that smoothly. There were hiccups that I think Sandra expected. But again, Laura and I being attorneys, when sometimes things blow up, you're like, oh shit, and then start to stress a little more than you need to. But I will say, literally every time Laura and I have gotten off the phone or off of a video chat with Sandra, we have said, oh my God, I feel so much better. Literally every time. Because she made it very easy to organize all the paperwork from St. Louis. So we moved from St. Louis, Missouri, and it's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of communication going back and forth, making an appointment at the consulate to get the visa and have that appointment. We had ours in DC, about a month before we moved. And we're getting really stressed about that. And Sandra told us the whole time, don't worry, it's going to happen. Don't worry. And sure enough, it did with more than enough time to spare. And also during this time, helped us, I mean, gave us recommendations of schools to look at. Some of her other clients had kids. I don't remember if it was at Tassus, but you put us in contact with them, so we were able to discuss making that school decision, which for us was a very important one. Um, and then supported us by finding and buying a house. Maria, who was a former member of Sandra's team, um, would literally drive to different houses that we were interested in based on the listing, and then FaceTime us from the house and show us around. So we were able to eliminate some houses. And then when we got here to look at the homes, we already had an idea. We were looking more at, okay, did the house have good bones? And what was the neighborhood like? So it made it very, very easy to hand over the handling of basically allowing us to move to this country, because we had confidence in what Sandra had said. And then as up to that point, everything went so smoothly. And then when we got here, and you have to have an in-person appointment with the immigration authorities to get your physical residency card. And we had heard nightmare stories from friends. You show up, they say, no, you have the wrong piece of paper. If you've read these stories on the Facebook groups, they are all true. That you can show up and they'll say, nope, no, you need this form. And um, you feel sometimes like you're getting the runaround. We never had to deal with that. We showed up for our appointment that morning. A member of Sandra's team uh, met us at the Cascais, the SEF, which was the previous immigration authority, met at their office. She was like, "Go have a seat in the waiting room. I'll let you know when it's time to come in." And we waited for maybe an hour. And she was like, "All right, come on in." The woman asked us like two questions, the immigration authority, and had to sign our papers and take a picture, and that was it. Whereas friends of mine, that were doing it solo have waited for 3 hours, got called up, and were on their way in less than 30 seconds because, the title of the form was wrong because it can be, not knowing the language, that can be very intimidating too, because you think you have the right thing, you've done the Google Translate, everything like that. But unless you're familiar with the actual process and what they're looking for, um, good luck.
So and probably as you remember, Tom, we discussed a lot of times. Initially, we were thinking about the north, and we
Yep.
said that between the Sintra and Cascais area, it would be a much better place. You'd have a much bigger offer of international schools. Now there are some more in the north, but back then there were not that many. So you'd have a lot of school options. And with kids, it's always a central thing to take care of the kids first, to integrate them, and then take care of the parents. And we had several Zoom meetings while you were in the States, where we addressed all the documents, all the legal stuff, but you also addressed your concerns as a family, your expectations, your fears. And I think that it didn't solve everything. So you still had things to experience here, but at least you knew a little bit more, and you knew you'll have a helping hand the whole time assisting you throughout the process.
And if I can just springboard off that for a second, finding the right school and having that option, Sandra, because I remember very clearly, you were the one that recommended, well, sometimes these schools don't work out. Um, and so you want to have the options. We were originally looking at Braga, which has one international school. Apparently, it's almost all Portuguese and Spanish, is what I've been told. So there wasn't really much of an expat community. Then in Porto, at the time, there were two international schools, um, and we have heard from people here that they're on their fourth school when they come to Tassus. People really moving international schools a lot. And that's not a comment on the quality of those schools. It's just international schools apparently have kind of a reputation for that. And, fortunately, the people we know that have moved from other schools to Tassos have stayed. So I hope we made the right choice. We're very happy there.
Mhm. So we've heard from Tommy what the experience was like for their family. Dr. Sandra, could you walk us through the process now from the beginning, from initial planning phases to actually making the move in Portugal and even after with the AIMA appointment and all the major milestones in this
Yes,
process?
I will do it briefly. If you have then specific questions, come back to us. We will answer them in writing, and if possible, set up a Zoom in you. So probably I won't address every specific issue of all our audience, but if you started to work with us now, we would, after discussing the fees and start paying, we would immediately issue a power of attorney, which you'll be signing within the next days, and we will immediately start asking for a NIF, which is something equivalent to your social security number. Then we would ask you for the documentation for the bank account. We will make sure you will open the bank account remotely. And then immediately afterwards, we will try to understand what is your timeline and try to set appointments. We will send you a list of all the written and unwritten rules for the appointment, and we will explain those things through several Zooms. So this is a lot of what we do here, a personal assistance. We will guide you through everything. We'll explain everything. We will be the ones setting the appointments. We will be the ones filling in the forms. We will be preparing a lot of documentation, even giving the proper guidance now to get the FBI and to do the apostilles. And so by the time you get to the appointment, we'll have checked, double checked, triple checked, and also do a specific meeting preparing you for the appointment itself, which, as you know, doesn't have the structure of an interview. It's more documentation checking, and you have to bring all the documentation in paper. And this process is also is evolving, despite the fact that the law is the same. So there were times where they accepted when it was your time, they accepted sealed envelopes with the FBI. Now they only accept the FBI, the criminal records, if they are apostilled, as well as other public documents. Then initially they would allow you to keep your passport. Now, since 1 year, more or less 1 year, they withhold your passport, but there's the possibility to ask for a new one in the US when your passport is legally withheld. So we try to make also accompanying all the subjectivity and all the evolution that this process is having, despite with the same law, with the same rules, and also from place to place, the process is different. In San Francisco, it's different from Washington. At this moment, it's extremely hard to get appointments in Washington. We have several people trying at the same time. We have some bots working. We have our IT personnel working on some bots to make it more efficient. If there are normally the vacancies we have are from people that just cancel their appointments. So these are the vacancies we are getting, but we are also studying other legal solutions to deal with our clients, knowing that the jurisdiction is mandatory. So if you reside within the Washington, D.C. area, you're not free to choose another place, another consulate, if you have their legal residency. So this is important because a false move can make, we had clients that were so happy they get an appointment elsewhere, and then the whole effort was jeopardized because it was not, and then they came to us after this bad move. So then we do an important help. So between after you have the appointment and before your passport is stamped with the D7 visa, the 4 months visa to come to Portugal and end the process, we also check with the consulates, and this is a time for the families and applicants of great anxiety, and because they cannot track, they don't know what's going on, and we know the consulates, we know the people, so we can contact them and at least try, not in an immediate way, but try to accompany, understand what's going on, and we know what's normal, what is not normal. This is something we are doing on a regular basis. Then when your passport is stamped with the visa, typically they might get you an AIMA appointment, which is an AIMA in the immigration service here to end the process or not. And if they do not give it, we get you the appointment. There were times where it was almost impossible to get appointments, but we worked the extra mile. I had lawyers every day going to AIMA, try all types of phones and platforms. And the thing is, we managed to get appointments to everyone despite the effort. And despite that, we had to go to Braga or Vila Real with our clients, or to Madeira, or we travel throughout the country to make these appointments happen, and to make sure our clients were properly guided. And we prepare a file with all the documentation for the AIMA appointment, which has changed just within the last months, has changed a lot. So in August, in the Algarve, they were asking for citizen cards from the landlords. Now they don't do it anymore, but still very demanding in terms of tax documentation related to leases and other details. So, but we have bulletproof process. We in the last months we did over 60 AIMA appointments, and they were all successful, with the exception of one that was a very, very complicated case. But in the meantime, we already did an injunction, and we solved partially the problem that we got in that one situation that was complicated and that caused us problem. But it's also important to have someone that does dominate the legal side, and it's not just a selling machine, a commercial entity, because there might be legal issues, important legal issues. And so after the AIMA appointment, our clients typically wait 2 to 3 months before the residency card is issued for a period of 2 years in the case of the D7 and the D8. We also help and I have lawyers going to the AIMA every week to know what is the status of the issuance of the cards, which is quite important. And then again, it's also a moment of uncertainty and anxiety to those that move their life to the other side of an Atlantic to here and don't know exactly what is going on, or if there's any problem with the cards. Sometimes the cards are lost and there's problem with the mail delivery, and we also track and try to address those questions to avoid that our client has any type of problems.
Yeah. And now, Tommy, I would like to ask you about your experience working with the team at SGP, Sandra Gomes Pinto and Associates. Why did you choose us?
Happily. So we had started discussing the move in 2021, and then things picked up steam in 2022, and my wife joined several Facebook groups, and we started researching the different avenues, which looked like there were three. One, doing it yourself, relying usually on the guidance of Facebook groups or something like that. Two, hiring one of the international relocation companies like Atlantic Bridge. Or three, going using an immigration attorney, what I thought was the more traditional route. And so we listened to a webinar. I think it was for a couple from Tucson.
Yes,
That
Arizona, yes.
Yeah, um, I'm not going to lie to you here, Sandra. I thought maybe you were paying them because they were so praising of their experience. Um, and it sounds cheesy, but it really was like a glowing
But I
experience
was
for
not
me.
paying them.
I know.
As I'm not
Um,
paying you. Yes.
I so I be like I said, we're both attorneys. We looked into, tried to do the best due diligence we could on people's experiences, because we did also look at some of the relocation companies and two other immigration attorneys, just because we were doing what we thought was probably the biggest move that um, we'll ever do. Never say never, but I think we're safe so far. Um, and wanted someone that we felt, like I said, was good, that we could completely trust. Um, because this was gonna, while we were gonna be doing the move, life goes on. My girls still had to go to school. They still had their seventh grade and eighth grade dances. And dealing with the emotions of that, of saying goodbye to their best friends. And as silly as this may sound, it really, one of the things that Laura and I appreciated the most was being able to hand over the very stressful, like compiling all the documents, getting them in the right order, making sure we had all the documents. We could, unfortunately, my wife and I are not the most organized of people when it comes to documents and things like that. So we would send just these mass emails with attachments to Sandra and be like, sorry for the pile of crap, but this is what we have. And she would she and her team together were so amazing, because we'd be hearing from three different people in a week, but not in a bad way, not in a way that felt disconnected. It was, these were people that we had all spoken to on the Zoom calls. Um, so we didn't get just to know Sandra, we got to know the whole team. And but back to my original point, that it really freed us up to focus on the girls and how they were handling it, making sure that they were excited to move to Portugal and dealing with their own, the sad feelings of saying goodbye to people. And that really made things so much easier, and continues to make things easier because whenever we have a problem, even if it's just, hey, what is this document legit or something like that, we can call Sandra, and we do call Sandra and say, hey, could you help us with this? And, whether it's jumping on a phone call with when I was getting my driver's license issued over here, just for a 2-minute call, and then there's not a bill or anything. It was really reassuring to have that, because it is scary. And, if you're anything like us, there are moments of uncertainty and those questions of, did we make the right decision? And it's because that moment is just so intense, and moving over here for us was intense. But having someone that you can pass off things to or say, can you help me with this, is worth a hell of a lot. And so I think that the level of that should tell you the level of trust that we have in Sandra and her team.
Can I saw some question in the chat. There was someone that asking when I talked about Washington, if Miami and Houston, the consulates for Miami and Houston still were viable options for those residing in the Washington, D.C. area. And those are viable options. This is the only place, the people that are in the area for Washington, D.C. that can opt for other consulates such as Miami and Houston. So this is a possibility.
There was also another question regarding which consulate covers North Carolina, and this is Washington.
Yes.
Yes. So the next question, Dr. Sandra, would be about the main visa pathways in 2026. If you could walk us through briefly what each visa is for and who can apply to them.
So see, the ones that are mostly used by our clients, although there are other options, are the D7 and the D8. The D7 is for those that are passive income holders, meaning those that have pensions, social security, rentals, interests, dividends, royalties. This is the D7 income they don't have to work for. The other one is the D8, that those working remotely in Portugal with but being paid by a foreign entity, being an individual or a company, while residing in Portugal. So it's irrespective of the nature of the work, and it's also irrespective of the legal form that they are doing their professional activity. It can be a labor contract, they can be individual service providers, or any other type of form that handles their professional activity, as long as they are being paid by a foreign entity and reside in Portugal. And the name digital nomad visa can lead to a misconception because it's digital nomad, but this is not limited to digital activities. Even a painter or a psychologist or someone working with their hands could perform work and being paid by a foreign entity and could fall into the category of digital nomad visa. There's a huge difference, not only in respect of where the income comes from, but also about the financial demand. So for the D7, what is required is only the Portuguese minimum wage, which is in 1996, 920 euros, whereas the digital nomad requires for the main applicant 4 times the minimum wage, which is 3,680 euros, something like this. In both situations, on top of that income, you have to have 50% for the spouse and 30% for each child that is coming under your visa. These are the main differences. These are residential visas, so you have to reside in Portugal, you have to stay here, you have to have your family life centered here. If you cannot move to Portugal and would like to have a safe harbor in Europe, it is possible to go the golden visa route, but we only advise to those that are not in conditions to reside here, but would like to have a safe harbor in Europe. And those, but in this case, it is required an investment of 500,000 euros. But it's possible to do a good investment according to financial planning that people could do elsewhere in the world, and also benefit with the golden visa scheme, with the possibility to reside in Europe for you, or to reside in Portugal with a free travel within the Schengen space. And this could be possible for a whole family. So one golden visa investment could be used by the parents, the kids, the great parents, in even the in-laws in some situations. So we have a Filipino client. It has 8 people in their family, and it was only one golden visa investment. But we only advise golden visa for those that are not in condition to reside here. For those that can reside here, I believe that are other options that do not require an investment. We do think that this D7 visa is one of the best pathways to reside in Europe, and one that requires less. So we believe that sooner or later, the requirements will be more demanding, and there will be additional restrictions for people to move to Europe. So if this is something serious, something you ponder seriously, I think it's better to move faster than not to do it, if this is what you want to do with your life.
There are just some more questions in the chat. From Patricia, should you put more in your bank account if single when you apply for the D7 visa?
I think this Portuguese bureaucracy is the only place where more is better. So typically in your bank account, before you have the appointment, you should have a 1-year Portuguese minimum wage as minimum, but this is your money. You can spend it as you want it. But if you can put more, I think it can always be advantageous, because it gives the authority the sense that you won't have any difficulty providing yourself financially while you're residing in Portugal.
And just another question from Liropea. Can you travel out of Portugal during the D8 process?
Yes, you can. So when you have the D8 stamped your passport, you can go once outside of the European and come back. I would not advise to travel a lot during that time, because although we don't have borders in Europe, there's a tendency for things to be tracked, also because of terrorism and weaponry and money laundering. So I would advise people not to exceed that, but at least they can go once outside of Portugal and come back while after they have their passport stamped. Before that time, if they manage to keep the passport after the appointment, they can freely travel in that time. The only time I think there will be some restriction traveling is after you go to the AIMA appointment and before you receive your residency card. I think it's not advisable to do a lot of traveling. We have clients such as Tommy that was brave enough to do it and that get out with it, and many other clients get out with it, but sometimes we cannot guarantee that will be without any type of problems, and we as lawyers always have a cautious approach.
We have another question. How long does the process take from start to finish? For example, if we wanted to move at the end of the summer of 2027, when should we begin?
Of the end of summer 2027. I think it's not now, it's not an early time. If you made a decision, it's not an early time to start working on this, because I think, and now this is science, the sooner you start planning, programming, organizing with professional assistance, the more chances you have to have a successful relocation. So I think if you to start the visa process itself within if you are lucky with the appointments, which they can be troublesome, within 6 months you could move to Portugal. I think the right thing to do would be, if you want to come in summer 2027, to start now with professional assistance, to organize a timeline, to organize a plan when you'll be doing what, because I think that's the way to do things in a more organized way. And if by any chance during this period there is a significant change in the law, if the requirements turn much more complicated, you would have you would be able to address this and to speed up the process if needed.
And it just, if I can, because we started at about this time, a little later, um, back then. So it would have been around this time, 2022, moving end of summer 2023. And it allowed us to move at a much more relaxed speed. We didn't have any situations where Sandra was like, we need these documents yesterday. We were able to kind of plan things out. We knew what documents were going to be required. So we had plenty of time to request them from our bank, from wherever else we needed them. And having that extra time was really, took a lot of stress off.
Mhm. And Tommy, now with respect to buying property in Portugal, could you compare the process, what it's like here in Portugal with what it is in the US, and what was it like having support during this process?
It's different. It was, in the US, you can go on realtor.com or whatever and look at every home that's available. Um, Over here, you work with just the broker that's selling the house. Or if you have your own, they can only, like if you're working with a Remax broker, they can only look at Remax houses. And then so we did an end around on the system by Sandra's team member Maria, who helped us so much. So she was able to, what was really great is if we were looking at a house and so she knows all the different neighborhoods of the felt like the entire Lisbon, Cascais, Sintra area. And so she could say, no, that's not going to be the right area for you. Why don't we look over here? She knew what was going to be the best path for us to get to school. Um, so really helped guide us in that regard. Um, Getting a mortgage over here was completely different. I We literally had to get full physicals from the doctor and have a full medical report done in order to get a mortgage. Um, it, I will say, from what I understand, and Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, is a huge help for the immigration authorities if they see that you have a mortgage in Portugal provided by a Portuguese bank. So, we went all in, we bought the house. So it was very different from the US. Contractually, again, as lawyers, just looking at how everything is laid out. Here, it felt a little looser, just in that, Sandra prepared the promissory note for us, and that's really the contract with the buyer. And so because of the different medical forms and everything, we would submit them to the bank and then they would be expired. So we had to get them redone. Um, and that was so nice to hear from Sandra's team that this is normal. Don't worry. No, there's nothing bad going on. This happens all the time. And while it was frustrating at the time, again, getting off the phone and being like, okay, I feel better. That calm guidance counts for a lot. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the whole home buying process for me in the United States or in Portugal is very stressful. I just want it done. I'm like, having somebody to really take the questions again off your shoulders uh, means a lot.
And Dr. Sandra, from your end, what does this process look like with helping someone buying
Yes.
property?
Just a quick remark. We helped Tommy and her family find an excellent house in Sintra, which I think it was an excellent investment. This house for sure, 5 years after your investment, values a lot more than what it did. And we also help with facilitating with a mortgage broker, making sure and making all the facilitation, accompanying you throughout the whole process, which I believe it was quite useful and important that we were with you the whole time during that process, and that you didn't have to face that alone, because even mortgage brokers are not sometimes that responsive. So, and they do ask for paper and more paper, and for it might have been more complicated for you without us. I think the process of buying a house in Portugal, in a nutshell, the first moment would be to choose the right house, and we help you identify after you have yourselves looked for several houses and that we discussed, we help you find the right one. And immediately once we find a house, we will take a look at all the documentation. But sometimes when it's an interesting business, it's important to take the house out of the market, and to do a reservation, which is not a formal binding contract, but it's sort of a gentleman's agreement. And we did that. And immediately afterwards, when we analyzed all the documents, the land registry that in Portugal serves as an ID for the house. So if the house has encumbrances, litigation, any type of problem, it should be registered in the land register. And with the code of the certidão permanente, you can access anywhere in the world to that registry, and you can understand what's going on with that property, who the owner is, who were the previous owners, if there's any mortgage, litigation, any problem. This is something you can access online. It's registered, so that gives a lot of certainty to the process, but it's important a proper person to analyze that. Another thing, you have also the document from the tax authority, the document attesting the energy efficiency of the house, which is relevant because you can know a lot from the expenses you will be having in electricity based on that. It is important the license from the city council, and also that you have the technical data from the house, which is also an element from the city council. And in some cases, it will be also important to analyze the condominium rules, and to analyze also the process that you have that in the city council, to make sure everything is all right, there's no problem with the house. We did all that, and we wrote the promissory note with the promissory contract, which is not mandatory, but everybody does in Portugal, and it formalizes as a binding contract all the details of the deal. Who is the owner? Who is the buyer? When are you going to buy? If you can prorogate the deadlines, if you cannot, what is the owner and the seller assuring? What if anything goes wrong? Is there an option to try to do it later? So there are many things that it's very important to address in the promissory contract, and some of these obligations could even be binding after the deed, after acquiring the property. We had, for instance, recently a Filipino client contacting us. He sold the house, didn't talk with us, and now the buyer is telling there was severe problems in humidity and water. And he said, am I still responsible? And I said, this should have been addressed in the promissory contract and later in the deeds. There should be written that you are buying the house as it is, that you did your technical due diligence, so there is no possibility to claiming hidden defects. Otherwise, they can be claimed. So under certain circumstances. So it is really important. If there's no problem, there's no problem. But to address future complications and future problems, and you don't want to litigate in Portugal, it's important to do a promissory contract. Immediately after the promissory contract, you do the deed, and with the deed, there is the transaction of the property from the seller to the buyer, and it is immediately registered in the land register. So it's something that becomes immediately official, and the register should be handled to you. So it's quite a safe process as long as you do it properly and with someone that is completely independent. A realtor won't be, they will want you to work with their lawyers. That can be excellent lawyers, but for sure are not independent because they are working for the one interested in the process itself. So typically, this is the process. We sometimes advise our clients to get also a technical due diligence to know the status of the house, to be sure that they are on a safe ground, that they are not buying something with complicated hidden defects. And we also sometimes suggest our clients to do an independent evaluation just to make sure we have a company we work with that gives us the 10 transactions within the area of similar properties, so we know at each moment what is the market value, and that can be also obtained through a combination of market value and also the possible profit you can get from a lease contract. So there are important things for you are in a foreign country for you to make sure that you are doing the right thing. Location is very important. Sometimes the foreign buyers do not understand why within 1 kilometer is something much affordable than in the other area, but the other area could be much more interesting and much more relevant also from a real estate perspective.
And just to ask you a question related to the mortgage, we have a question from one of our clients, Trisha Dunn. Will you be denied a mortgage if you have certain medical conditions? Dr. Sandra?
It depends. I'm not a bank, unfortunately, so I cannot know, and I don't know what is the specifics. This might happen, but if there are two people in a couple and only one has the medical condition, if they have strong financials before them, and if they present a significant down payment, I think this deal could be done, but I don't know the specifics. So, and there is not an overall answer, and not all the banks work the same way, but we'll make sure that we are used to make the impossible possible. So if anyone has any type of problem, I think we will get them a bank as long as their financials would be enough to help them. Another little that can be surpassed also, but it's different from the US to Portugal. In Portugal, typically they only loan money until their 70s. So this is also something strange and new for the Americans. And also some of the insurance, if one of the people loaning the money dies, some types of insurance and the old ones cover fully the payment of the total payment of the house, which is very strange for Americans, as far as I understand. Now they are creating insurance that do not cover that, but the old ones and some do cover that. But also during this process, and when you have a life insurance, many of our clients don't know what the life insurance covers or not. So it's important to have someone independent explaining all that throughout the way, because there are life insurances that do not cover the price of the house if one of the members of the couple dies within the process. There are insurance that covers that, but most foreigners have no clue about this, and sometimes the mortgage brokers and the realtors do not explain this detail in a legal way, and this can be, for a family, this can have a huge impact. We've had clients that one of the spouse unfortunately died, and they had the house was immediately full paid because we make sure they had an insurance that covered that situation. So it's small details, but can be super impactful in one's lives.
Mm-hmm. And coming to your renewals, Tommy, you've just completed your renewal process, and we're also very happy that it has been concluded. What was the whole experience like for you?
Um, it was pretty it was pretty easy. We emailed Sandra and said, "Hey, we have our renewals coming up, help." And we you sent us the checklist of documents you needed. You might have had to send a reminder. And once we sent that over, we didn't have to do anything. Um, I think it's natural for us to stress a little bit. So we would be emailing Sandra, oh my God, we haven't heard anything. We haven't heard anything. It's okay. It's okay. We've got this covered. And again, she was right. She got it covered. We and the renewals, in my opinion, were somewhat even more stressful than the initial, because now we've built our life here, and you're like, oh God, what if they decide they don't want us? And to be clear, like we haven't done anything that hopefully that would so offend the Portuguese people that they'd kick us out. But um, we uh, we have friends that have been to AIMA, let's see, 4 times, 6 times, sometimes 1 or 2 times, but they're going there, they don't have the right documents, or this particular document wasn't apostilled. Sorry, like that's a legal requirement. What we did, we just emailed our stuff to Sandra. We didn't even have to go to an appointment. And I it's yeah, I don't think it's gloating quite, but when we shared that with some friends of ours that we were on a trip with recently, there were some F-bombs dropped in our direction about the fact that we got approved and didn't even have to go in, because it can be a very complicated process. And again, that it wasn't for us.
So I'm very happy that it was easy and smooth for you. For us, it wasn't that easy, meaning we start very early working on that. And there was a time where there were no appointments in IMA available, so we had to go to court, and the court was not responding. In the middle, they created a portal, but it wasn't clear the documentation. They were not allowing us to submit because of the NIS. And then we went several times in person to AIMA, and they finally explained how to surpass the neat things and other documentation that just didn't make sense. But we were really worried. You wanted to go to the States to seek university for the girls. So we our Christmas 2025, Sarah from our team we were working hard. We have to get this done for the tailors. We have started in the summer, but fortunately we managed to do it in time. But it required, because the portal was just new, so it required a lot of efforts to know how it, because nobody understood exactly how it worked. They were asking for a NIS, they were not granting you a NIS, and there were other documents that made no sense whatsoever. So we needed to surpass how to overcome that in a portal. But in the end, and with lots of in-person meetings in the AIMA, it was quick and it was possible. And we are so glad that it was smooth for you. But I do have a team of girls and boys working
You worked your yes.
there
It was,
to make
and
that happen.
if I could just share, the one part that really hammered home to us why we were so glad that we had hired you is we went to, so Ima had told you, okay, they need the NIS, the social security number. So we went to get the social security number, and they said you have to have um, either a valid, so our cards had expired at that point, and they said you have to have a card or an appointment for a new one. And we went to get the appointment for the new one, and they said, well, you have to have the NIS. We're
Yes.
like, well,
So,
we can't
so
get the
it's
NIST
the
without the
circular impossibility. You have
to
to have the needs to get an appointment.
yes.
To have the needs, you have to have an appointment. But this is typical in the Portuguese bureaucracy. We have lots of advantage. The Portugal is getting more and more digital, but sometimes we get in this legal bureaucracy where everything is impossible. So it's really hard to navigate that. And I think hopefully it's getting better. But just the other day, I was in the AIMA and I was hearing someone asking the people in the door, the person in the door, and they asked, "Oh, you told me to come at the 3 o'clock. Oh no, but now we only handle this if you come at midday." And she said, the next time when I come, you'll say it is 9 o'clock. So it's these little things. And we lawyers say that many times, devil is in the details. So handling these details and the IMA bureaucracy is something that we do a lot. We know the people, we do our best to make sure to make life to our clients easy and to avoid anxiety, uncertainty of these little things that can be extremely annoying and worrying for a family.
And Dr. Sandra, if we could now talk about the NHR 2.0, if you could briefly talk about the benefits and who can apply for this new regime.
So I will first talk a little bit about the NHR. Tommy and his family were lucky enough to still have applied for the NHR and were covered by the NHR. The NHR was an incentive regime that would benefit all the retirees. Now it's not that case. So people would only pay initially nothing in respect to their pension when they were residing in Portugal. And then later they had to pay 10% in Portugal as a country of residency if they were not paying that amount or more in the country of origin. And they would also be exempted to pay taxes in Portugal in respect to their passive income in the country of residency. There are exceptions to this, but this is the general rule. And this is quite important and has a significant financial impact because when you reside in Portugal, after being civil resident and after becoming tax resident, you do have to file taxes in Portugal on your worldwide income, and you may be taxed on that income. There's, of course, a convention to avoid double taxation that will be in place, so you should never be double taxed, but this is something that you have to attend. Now, Portugal ended the NHR that would generally benefit the retirees and the pensioners, and there is a more limited possibility of tax incentives, which is the NHR 2.0, which is now limited to professors, researchers, doctors, some tech activities, some high value activities, some startups and tech innovative projects. And the benefit of this NHR is that people can benefit from a 20% flat taxation rate on their Portuguese income, and they can also benefit, and this is super important, of exemption on taxation in respect of their passive income earned in the country of origin or residency. So for those Americans that have already an interesting portfolio of savings and of income coming out of these savings, having this regime could be extremely beneficial because in many of those passive income, they will be still exempted from paying taxes here. And also the tax regime in Portugal can easily reach the 48%. So if you can benefit from a 20% flat tax rate, that would be great. It's important also to bear in mind that to apply for the NHR in the previous 5 years of the application, you could not have been tax resident in Portugal, and you have to apply immediately after you become tax resident. Because there is a very limited time to do that, and if the time passes by, There's no way around it. So it's important. It's more the existing NHR. It's a little bit more complex, even from a legal point of view and a bureaucratic point of view, is more complex. But it's an opportunity worth exploring because that can have a huge financial impact on your life. These and other little things you have to pay attention. For instance, if you want to sell a house in the US, it would make sense that you are selling it not in the year that you become tax resident. So the issue of capital gains will not avoid any discussion about this in Portugal. So there are small things that people can do as a tax preparation to understand what will be their tax exposure and how to handle, which are very important to take care and to attend.
Mm-hmm. And just a follow-up question from one of our clients, Lee Abramson. When do you become a tax resident?
So there are several criteria, and we have to combine these criteria all together. There is a 183-day criteria. There is a criteria when you have a regular abide in Portugal, when you have signs that you show that you intend to stay here for a longer time. Many times, from a practical point of view, is after receiving the residence permit card that you go to the tax authority platform, and with the residence card, you become tax resident. This has been until now more or less the practice, but if you have been residing here and doing transactions and presenting your NIF, the tax authorities may, if you have been living here more than 183 days, and if the tax authorities verify that also they may consider you tax resident. So this is a question where the law have several criterias. You have to combine all the criterias. There is an international convention from the OECD criteria, which is you should be considered tax resident where your family life is centered. And this is because people that are living in multiple places, I think this in the end it's the main criteria, but it will be important to address your specific situation, knowing that from a practical point of view, until now, in many situations, you receive the resident permit card and you go to the tax authority to become tax resident. And from that moment on, you are considered tax resident. This has been what we have been accompanying from a very practical point of view.
And just another question from our audience. Do you offer tax consultation, or are you able to refer clients with a complicated relocation situation?
Yes, we have in-house tax experts, international tax experts.
Okay. And now moving on to your AIMA appointment, Tommy, your initial AIMA appointment, which was SEF at the time. What was your experience like, and how did on-the-ground representation help you?
Again, that was pretty easy. That one was we had to compile all of our financial documents, our bank accounts from the US, so the same that we did for renewals, but at the time it was much more new to us and we were in the middle of the move. And so we had been on the ground for less than 2 months, but it felt like a lot longer than that because you're waiting. And then we got the call, okay, meet us at the Cascais, the one in the downtown Cascais, at the office there. I think it was 8:30 in the morning. And we were like, okay, what documents do we need to bring? Because Laura and I were ready to spend the night printing up, 4 trees worth of documents, and very fortunately, we heard back, no, you don't, we've got you. And so we showed up at the Cascais IMA office. I can't remember who from your team was there, but it said, go sit in the waiting room. And so we brought books with us because we figured it was going to be a long wait. And I think we waited for an hour in the waiting room. We were just sitting there reading, and then she popped her head out and said, "Okay, I think Molly was the first one. Molly, come on back." So she went back. They took her picture. Laura went back with her because they had to have her sign something. And then Laura and I each went back, and it was like, okay, that's it. Like we didn't really have to do much of anything. The team from Sandra's office put together all of our application materials, completed all of the documents for us at the office, and then I mean she handled all the communication. It was literally just going in, having my picture taken, and signing the form.
And Dr. Sandra, from your end, how do you assist clients in this phase with AIMA, with the AIMA process? And if you could tell us some of the changes that AIMA has been going through.
So many times our clients do not have the appointment set up, so we set the appointments from them. And we also try to make sure that sometimes to have the appointments near Lisbon when we have the chance to do that. We have had many cases where one of the children has the appointment in the Algarve, the parent at the same time has the appointment in Oporto, the mother in Braga, and so we have to negotiate to deal with AIMA to make sure the whole family does at one place. And so getting the appointments at some point it was quite hard. Now it's getting a little bit better. And we also organize a file. We update all the documents. There has been a lot of changes in the AIMA procedure throughout the summer. So we make sure we have a bulletproof process and we prepare the files ourselves. We fill in the forms, we update the documentation, we make sure it's bulletproof, it has anything they can ask for. There was a discussion whether the NIS was being necessary for the AIMA or not. And in the majority of the D7s and D8s, then AIMA decided it's not necessary. But for a while, we still got declarations that there was not a necessity for social security for the NIS. So it's many little details that we do prepare, and in many AIMA places, this is the kind of place that you would not like to. Sometimes with huge queues all over the streets. So this is sometimes the place where you don't want to be by yourself. Because in some places there are people that are quite recent employees, and the less people know, the more complicated the experience with them can be. And sometimes they are not that proficient, and they make sure they will not be talking in English. So it is a place where it makes all the difference if you have the proper professional assistance.
And finally, Tommy, I'd like to ask you to describe your experience so far living in Portugal. What is the best part of this journey, and what would your advice be to people in the same boat as you, also looking to start their life here?
Um, I can't remember if I've already shared this, but Laura and I just about every day turn to each other and say at least once, "I'm so glad we moved." Um, it the the people are lovely. The food is lovely. The driving, once you get used to it, is actually less stressful than the States, except for the roundabouts. That never gets better. But there's a certain pace of life here where the everything uh, people seem to focus on the right things, in my opinion. Um, the the amount of like just friendliness that you get from being a very obvious white person trying to speak Portuguese is amazing. I have tried to learn. I am woefully bad at languages. Fortunately, my wife is extremely good. Um, but my best phrase is meu português é muito mal, which just means my Portuguese is very bad. And but I go in when I go into a store, when I go into a doctor's appointment, anything, I try to speak Portuguese. I don't do it well, but the people really appreciate that because I think that Portugal is a very proud country, in the best of ways. Um, like things that are made in Portugal are really high quality, I found. God, the clothes and the shoes here and are just fantastically made, and they're not insanely expensive. Um, the food at the store, I mean, the eggs and the chicken breasts, things like that that are just stupid good for a fourth the price of what we were paying in St. Louis. Like things like that, that when we do go back and visit family or friends, it's kind of it's almost off-putting. Um, and we have, really great friends that we've made here, and not just in the expat community. Friends from the gym, friends, from Sandra's office, that and from all over the world. We have good friends that are South African, that are Brazilian, that are Portuguese, that are French, that are Italian. Um, and it's really refreshing because you get exposed to so many different perspectives on things, that we never had that before. Also, on a long weekend, you can hop on a flight to Dublin, London, Rome, Amsterdam, a direct flight for very, very inexpensive. And it's less than 3 hours. I mean, Marrakesh is what, an hour away by plane? Um, and then going back to the States isn't bad either. There's a flight on American Airlines to Philadelphia. I think it's AA 258 that is under 7 hours. There are direct flights to Miami on tap, direct flights to Newark. Um, so one of the great things about Lisbon, of the many great things, um, is how accessible it is. And in speaking of Lisbon, just what an amazing city. Like walking around down there feels like walking like you're in a movie. It's so bleeping cool. Like I really love it every time I go into the city. And there's just so much history. We have a little rooftop deck on our house, and we look out onto the mountains, the Sintra Mountains, with Penna Palace and um, Moorish Castle there, which are like two of the most famous sites in Portugal, and we can just go outside and look at them. And when you're driving up to a roundabout on our street, you can see them. And I told Laura, I was like, if I ever get tired of this view, just shoot me, because I mean, I'm too far gone, jaded, because it really is. When we were in Dublin for a week last week, looking at universities for our girls, um, and then when you land back, there's a certain peacefulness hearing Portuguese now, because we can just exhale because we're home, and it just feels safe. It feels at this point very familiar and just warm. And I think that, again, that's coming from a very obviously white guy who can't speak Portuguese worth a damn. And I feel so at home here.
Mm. And thank you so much, Tommy, for sharing. And before we end, I'd like to direct some of the questions to you, Dr. Sandra, from our chat.
Yes.
One from our client, Leah Bramson. If you have a second passport, will that mitigate the travel issues that someone would have?
Yes, for sure, for sure. That's the point of having a second passport. Yes, but I would not overdo it on the travel before you have your visa figured out.
Another question, is work commitment travel okay around Europe and UK during the time frame between getting the D visa and the AIMA appointment?
I don't understand if I completely understood the question. Can you rephrase it, Marisa? Did you understand it?
Is she allowed to travel during the time frame between getting the D visa and the appointment? So it maybe if she already has the D visa, and if she's still waiting for her AIMA appointment, is she allowed to travel in the EU?
Yes, she is. She is.
The next question, if your occupation is a physician or professor or college instructor in your country of origin, do you qualify for the new NHR? Do you need to provide a letter indicating that you have to be paid?
You because of the high value activity, you qualify for the NHR. The practicalities and the bureaucracy is quite complicated to address here, but you do have to prove that you have those, and then have to go throughout a process that has some complications, but you do qualify having those professions.
And another question, under the new NHR law, does my pension and other investment income be taxed at 10%?
No. Under the new NHR, it doesn't apply to retirees and pensionists. It's no longer broadly applied to those persons.
Another question, how do you apply for the new NHR?
The process is quite complicated. First, you have to see if you qualify. So you have to have one of these activities. You have to have a high quality activity or a startup. The high value activities are being a professor, a doctor, a researcher. You may also have a startup or certain types of roles in these companies. So you have to check if you qualify. You must not have been tax resident in Portugal in the 5 years prior to the application, and you have to do the application immediately after the moment you become tax resident. When it's just a simple profession and you prove that you are doing that activity, it may be simpler. If it's a startup, it may be a little bit more complicated, but this is something we can address all the details in a one-on-one conversation.
Another question is, if you have an account that shows the minimum year amount along with the savings account, is this sufficient for the D7?
Can you repeat the question?
If you have an account that shows the minimum year amount that the person needs to earn for the D7 along with the savings account, is this sufficient?
I think you have to show that on regular basis you are receiving the 920 euros per month. It doesn't have to be every month the same amount. It can be on average, but you have to show that on average you are earning that amount on passive income. It can be interest, dividends, any type of passive income. But you'll have to take a look at specific situation.
We have another question from Roger Baker. Are K-12 educators considered high value professions?
Are what?
K-12.
I don't know exactly what that activity.
Kindergarten through year 12 at school.
Yes. Okay. I don't think so. They are not considered professors at a high level university. I would not say, but we could analyze with more detail. I would say at the first glance that they would not qualify, but we'll have to double check that.
And there was another question. What are the main issues that you are seeing with AIMA?
The main issues in the summer, it was the NISing. They were requiring also the citizen card from the landlord, which got the landlords completely crazy. They are requiring additional declarations from landlords. So I think it's the accommodation is they are checking it very properly. Also, the Portuguese bank account is something they want really to check. They want to make sure that people has all the forms in order. And I would say these are the major issues, but also it varies a little bit from place to place. But I think proof of accommodation is something they verify in detail. They would like to see the tax authority documentation. They want to make sure people have a real place and it's not just something that was made up for the visa purposes.
And we have just one more question, which is the funny question. What printer do you recommend purchasing in Portugal?
What printer?
Printer.
I leave that question to you, Marisa.
Yes, I'm sure you can go into a walk-in, which is available at any mall, and there are several options here, and they're all good, I'm sure.
But you can
Yeah,
also
the Xerox printers are great, but they never I can't find ink anywhere at Fnac or Wharton or Office Max. For us, we've been through a couple in HP. They seem to do better here than they do in the States. And they always have printer ink. That printer or brother, I mean HP or brother always have plenty at Wharton, and there's always a plenty of ink. So or toner.
And I think with that, we've covered most of the questions. If there are any others that are not answered, please get in touch with us. We have left our contact details in the chat. And now, finally, Dr. Sandra, I'd like to ask you for your final note of advice to our viewers.
Yes. So final words. It's thank you again, Tommy, for doing this with us and tell us about your experience in Portugal and with us. And thank you so much. It's always a great pleasure to do this with Marisa. It's always so good to have her on board. I would say as a final note, there has been lots of discussions about citizenship and about people feeling very critics on Portugal because we are extending the citizenship time. It's important to note that the law was not yet changed, so the previous law is still applicable. So the 5 years are still applicable. But it's also important for people to know that as a foreigner in their daily life, people with a resident card, they will not feel in their daily life in no way that they are foreigners. So their rights and liberties would not be limited or coerced in any way because they are foreigners. And after the 5-year threshold, if a person has the A2 level of Portuguese, which for sure, Tommy, you enroll tomorrow and you'll soon do it. With the A2 level of Portuguese, you can apply for you can get permanent residency, and then also some of the burdens of immigration will be gone and some of the requirements of mini mandatory stays in Portugal. So people can live almost as Portuguese, and that is always facilitate residence elsewhere in Europe if you have permanent residency. So it's very important to be aware. In our office, we already marked on our computer your dates to get the permanent residency. So it's better that you and the family start working on that, Tommy. And I also say we try to accompany our families and people throughout their whole legal life. In your case of Laura, I think the next step would also to do some estate planning, especially having that always happens to me. Everybody calls during my webinars every time. So this is no surprise. It's only that is working well. So I was telling that the next step, we also work on estate planning, doing wills, and making sure people have all the things prepared on the legal side to prevent any type of problems in the future.
And thank you so much, Tommy, for sharing your story so openly. It was lovely to hear about you and your family and your journey to Portugal. And to everyone who joined us today, thank you for your time. If we haven't covered all your questions, please get in touch with us, and I have left our contact details in the chat. Thank you, Dr. Sandra, and we look forward to seeing everyone again on our next webinar.
Let me just give a final note. We will be promoting and creating more content and giving more news about legal stuff, AIMA, real stories of our clients, also in your YouTube. So for those who have interest on that, please subscribe on our YouTube channel, because we will also put a lot of effort into making this possible and getting more information for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tommy.